Good afternoon, good evening, ladies, and or good morning, wherever you are. Today's topic I'm going to be just talking about is basically talking about, can you still follow God's direction in a storm? Meaning, will you allow temptation to come into your life and change the direction God have for you? A lot of times people will get caught up in the temptations that Satan presents to you in different ways. And I'll just share a little bit about some things that I have dealt with when I was dealing with issues of financial setbacks. Two particular incidents. One was not financial setback. One was I was trying to sell my mom's home. And the other one was financial setback. So I'll start with the one of trying to sell my mom's home. My mother had passed away in 2003, and me and my husband, we had to sell her home, and we were dealing with other issues trying to sell it because at the time my mother was married, but her husband was incarcerated and he was in jail, and they had never lived together. So she purchased this home after while he was in jail, because when they got married, he was still incarcerated. And after they got married and when she got the home, he was still incarcerated. He didn't get out of jail until after my mom had passed away. And by then, my mom had already made the decision that she no longer had wanted to really be with her husband because there were some things that was going on between them that was very difficult for her to handle. And so when my mother passed, I had to sell the home to buy my stepfather out. So he wasn't my biological dad, he was my stepfather, because my dad died when I was a little girl. And so I had to sell it to buy him out. I had no choice because he was making it very difficult. His main thing was, I want them out of the house, I want to kick them out, or they have to buy me out. He just gave us two options. Now, I've never had an issue with my stepfather. I was always kind and making sure everything was okay with him while he was incarcerated. But my stepfather, once being in there and once my mom passed away, he became like a different person, and I didn't recognize who he was. And so, me being a new mom, my son was not even two years old yet. He had just started to turn two a little bit after my mother passed. It was very, very, very difficult to make the decision to sell my mother's home. I didn't want to do that, but I had to sell it because my stepfather was being very mean, and he didn't care. He was writing letters to me in a negative way. He had his family, certain family members writing things to me in a negative way, and then writing to my attorney after he found out who my attorney was, writing to her in a negative way. But the blessing thing through all of that was his mom was always a sweetheart, because she knew what he was doing was wrong, and she and my mom were very, very close, and she didn't agree with what was going on. So she wasn't very happy about that. And so I dealt with that a little bit. And after trying to sell my mom home, I was doing anything that I can think of as far as posting online. I was trying to get someone to buy it before, not buy it. I was trying to find a loan that would help me buy out my stepfather. But the way my mother did her will, she did not get a witness to her will. She handwritten it. And so he was contesting the will. And so that's what made it very difficult for me to sell the home. And so that's why I had to wait so long, and I had to get a probate attorney because of dealing with him. Now, my husband is the one that told me my mother came to him in a dream and told him to tell me not to sign any documents, that she needs to get an attorney. And so that's what I did. I got an attorney, and I found a probate attorney. Now, the part that makes everything very difficult, as I mentioned, my stepfather just felt like he was just going into battle, into war, and he wasn't California. He was in a totally different state. And she married him in that particular state where he was at. So, but because she brought her property in California, the law is different. So it becomes community property. So that's why he was able to fight me for the home. So I had to make a decision to buy him out. Now here's the part where I say you have to just be strong when you're dealing with a storm. I had so many people come to the home trying to offer me money to buy the house because they knew I was going into probate, and my attorney was doing the process of probate. So I had like a few people say, listen, I'll give you the money to pay all the expenses and whatever you need to owe, and you don't have to worry about trying to sell the home. You can keep it, because and the amount that I had to pay was a large amount. And so I just kept saying no, because the people that were offering it to do it, just in my spirit, I felt like it was a no. It was just not a good decision to make that choice. And so this one gentleman, I was writing information, trying to get just some help, and I was selling things that I had in my home that was a lot of value. And I didn't want to sell it because I had it for years, but I had to do this in order to try to raise some money. I was trying to raise money. And I remember this one guy, he said to me, he said, well, I'll give you a lot of money if you massage me. And his way of saying the kind of massage that he wanted was very vulgar. And so I deleted that account I had on that particular website, which was actually eBay, and I didn't go back on there because I had a different account where I would sell like toys for kids, and that was like when my mother was alive. It was like, no, I think it was a little bit after my mother had passed, and I had where I was selling toys for kids like backpacks and Dora the Explorer, and it was doing really well. But I closed that down because the company that I was buying my wholesale merchandise from went out of business. One of the best companies that I came across for buying kids' toys, really nice stuff, but they went out of business. And so the people that came around and dealing with the issues with my stepfather writing very horrible letters to me and writing to my attorney and threatening me in a way of like, I'm going to kick you out of that house, it was horrible. It was horrible to hear, and that was one of the storms that I dealt with, dealing with my mom's home. Now, once we went to, because the judge had decided that we needed to have like a mediator, and so we did that, and when all the paperwork was pulled out and put out on the table, you can see that a lot of documents that his attorney, my stepfather's attorney, was taking out paperwork. You can see that my signature was forged on a lot of the paperwork, and I didn't sign my signature like that. And I told his attorney, I said, that's not even my signature. And he said, well, really? I said, no, that's not my signature, and that's not how I sign. So I took out my ID, my social security card, and all this stuff to show how I signed my signature in a certain way. And even his attorney saw that he was doing some very bogus stuff. And that alone, showing proof of what he was doing that wasn't right, it helped me in a way. I still had to buy him out, and the reason I had to is because he was married to my mom. It was community property. It was nothing that I could really do. But out of buying him out, he didn't receive a dime of that money, because him hiring an attorney to do his work from where he is, he's in a whole nother state. That's like a 5-hour flight. If you get on the plane, it costs a lot of money for what he was doing. So all the money that he was supposed to get from the home, he never received that. That went to his attorney. So he never received it. But he did so many negative things to writing to my attorney and writing to me. It was just really horrible. But through it all, I stayed focused. I didn't go off. I didn't curse him out because I don't curse. I didn't do anything bogus to make things to the point where it wasn't. I just didn't do anything that wasn't of God. Anything that I did was of God and what God wanted me to do. And me and my husband, we stayed prayerful. We prayed before we went into that mediation. And when we went into the mediation, God opened the door and showed us, listen, you don't have to worry. We didn't get kicked out of the home. We brought him out, but because of the fact that we were dealing with financial setback, we could not keep the home, and so we had to make a choice to sell it, because all the money that we had saved up, we had to take that money and give it to the attorney to do the case, and it became very, very difficult financially. And within 2 weeks of moving out of the home, we had been looking for a place to move to, and some of the places that we were finding was really, really not all that great. And the managers who was managing the buildings, it seemed like they were a bunch of scam artists. When they would get your money and they would tell you, well, let me do a credit check, and they would run a credit check on you, and then they would say, well, her credit is fine, but his is not. He got like this on his, or no, your credit is not all that great. So it was just a bunch of difficulty. So then we went to Westside Rentals, and they were more organized, but we did not find a property through them as well, because within 2 weeks of us, that we had a limit after someone brought the house, because we did manage to sell the house. 2 weeks into moving, my uncle and his best friend say, hey, we have a house that you can move into. It's move-in ready. You can move into it. And I knew right at that time that was definitely God. And I said, yes, okay. We're going to move into this house. My thing is, you have to trust God. Sometimes storms come without warning, but we must stay focused, or Satan will find a way to come into our life and start making you confused and unbalanced, and he will try to remove your faith, so you won't stay focused on what God wants you to stay focused on. So you need to keep your direction and your eyes fixated on what God wants you to do, on the Bible, on Jesus, on God in heaven, and not on what man wants you to do. And don't allow Satan to come into your life, because Satan, the only thing he comes to do, he's like a thief. He steals, he kills, and destroys. And his main mission is to do that. Is to make you feel like you're not smart enough to handle anything, to cause havoc in your home and confusion. And his main mission is to do that. Trusting God when a storm comes will help you to be stronger and focused, and not allow the enemy to bring fear and doubt in your heart. And those worries will disappear once you focus on God in heaven. Anything that you have as far as doubt or worrying about something, when you leave it and give it to God in God's hands and come directly to him and say, God, I need guidance and direction on what to do, God is going to show you what to do. He's going to make sure that you understand his plan, so that you won't become confused and lost on what to do. So that's the most important thing you want to do, is not say, well, I think I can handle all this myself. No, go to God, because if you do it yourself, you're going to become lost and confused, and Satan is going to do that. He's going to want you to do that. So he's going to tell you, you can do this all by yourself. You don't need to ask God in heaven for nothing. And then you start becoming very lost and confused. And as I mentioned, that was just dealing with one situation with the home. It was very difficult of dealing with it. Another situation I've shared before, but I don't think I've shared this before, is when me and my husband was dealing with food, very low food, 99-cent store, and we would just budget what we had, like the real 99-cent store. This is the one that everything is 99 cents or two for 99 cents. But we were dealing with financial situations, and every other weekend his son would come over from a previous marriage, and we, even though we didn't have much food in the home, we would never say no to his mom and say, no, he can't come over because we don't have enough food. We just never told her what we were dealing with. And even dealing with that, we would go, like I said, to the 99-cent store and make sure we had enough food in the house. And then it became where my husband was asked at the church if he would drive the church van to help deliver food to people who had highly to know food. And it was something that God was doing so that we can have food in our home. So I remember him telling me, he asked the pastor, and he was saying, well, we're dealing with low food. Is there any way possible that you can put us on your list to get food? And he said, sure. And so we became one of the people who was not only helping folks with food, but we were also on the list as well. And when he was doing that, I remember one day my cousin came over, and she just came out of nowhere, like to visit. And she said, well, listen, I need you to help me with my hair. And my cousin had braids in her hair at the time. And as a teen, I worked with my mom, helping her customers take down their hair. And so that particular day, we were just very, very low on food. We had little to nothing. And she came over and she asked me if I could take down her hair. And I said, sure. I was really, really happy, but I had very little in my stomach. And she said, well, listen, I brought like some chicken. I brought like, snacks and stuff to drink and all this. And she said, and we can talk. And then she said, well, and then you can just like, take down my hair. That was like a lifesaver, because we really didn't have very much food in the house for the kids. And her coming over doing that, it really was really a blessing, because we really, really needed food in the home. And God knew that we were going through something, and so he took care of that. The littlest things, I'm telling you, are the most beautiful things that you will see, and the big things as well. Appreciate the little things that I see that happen. Just the other day, I needed to go to the market. I told my son, I said, we're going to get up like at 7 in the morning, hop in the taxi, go to the market. We're not going to wait for the bus to come get us, because I want to get there and get back, because we're dealing with hot weather. My aunt calls me at 8 o'clock in the morning, like around, I think 7 something. And she said, well, I'm at the doctor's office, not that far from your home. If you need to go to the market or anything, I can take you. And I said, that's definitely God, because I had already told my son we were going to be getting up early, but we wind up getting up a little later than the time that we were going to get up. And my aunt took me to the market because I really needed to go. So those little things that you're dealing with, or big things that you're dealing with, God is going to open the door to make sure you're okay. From if you are dealing with little to no food, he's going to find a way to make sure you have food in your home. And that's not the first time that my aunt has come over when I really needed something, when I couldn't really get there at a certain time. But God has ways of doing so many ways of opening doors and doing so many things to help you during the storm when you're dealing with hardship. Or not just hardship, just dealing with things that are difficult. When you're dealing with something that you just think you have no way out to get out of it, God is going to open the door. And you go to God in prayer. Talk to him. Have a conversation with God in heaven. Say, I'm dealing with this, I need this. Build a relationship with him and get into the Bible, get into his word, get into the Bible, understand the word, study it, and help those who are in need. those times when I wasn't feeling too well, when I would go to the hospital in my 20s, I was like in my, no, not my 20s, in my early 40s, I was dealing with an issue where I was dealing with fibroid tumor and low iron, and then I would have, I take hypertension pills, so I deal with low potassium, and at that time I didn't know what was going on. And so I remember it was one time I was at work and I was having this rapid heart rate and I didn't know what it was. And when I got to the doctor told me, he said, well, you're very, very dehydrated and then your potassium is a little low. And the dehydration came from, I was taking water pills at the time, and the water pills were prescription from my doctor. After I had my son, before I had my son, I was on water pills to get any salt, and I didn't eat a lot of salt. I didn't eat salt at all. I always ate like the food that my doctor told me to eat, but my doctor put me on these water pills because she felt like I needed to take them. So when I was pregnant with my son, I wasn't taking water pills, but as soon as I finished, after giving birth to my son, this male doctor put me back on the water pills, and I hadn't really seen my regular physician because I was going to King Hospital Medical Center because I was at like a high-risk pregnancy. And so I had to see a different doctor, and my doctor was just a regular physician, and because I dealt with hypertension, I had to go to a certain doctor, a certain location. And so when I got back from being well enough to see my regular doctor, my doctor had said, you do not need to be on these water pills, and she took me off of them. But before I had a chance to see her and I started going back to work, I started having like this issue, like I mentioned, rapid heart rate. And when I got to the hospital, that's what they told me. Even though I was going through something very difficult, there was a lady that was next to me, and she was dealing with like breathing issues. Now they put like a oxygen thing on me up my nose because my heart rate was beating so fast. I started praying for that lady over there because I said I was able to drive myself to the hospital even though I was having rapid heart rate. The doctor told me you should have been passed out. You could have passed out with your heart rate going that fast. I made it to the hospital. Once I got there, I started praying for this lady that was next to me because I felt in my heart and my spirit I needed to pray for her. And as soon as I started feeling better, I was well enough to get in the car, drive home from the hospital, and I was fine. But I was still really having like, it was what the doctor said I had dealing with low potassium and low water was very true because I was dealing with dehydration. And so when I got home, I had to be on a strict, drink a lot of water, a lot of products that, fruits and vegetables with a lot of water in it. But that lady, I knew in my spirit that she needed me to pray for her. And as I was sitting there, I heard that she was getting better. Sometimes you're going through something very difficult as far as your health or financial situations or relationship issues as far as your marriage or dealing with something difficult as far as your kids. Sometimes God has ways of doing, he has ways of doing things. And you need to be prepared. If you're going through something, God wants you to pray for somebody, even though you're dealing with situations. I've had times where me and my husband was dealing with financial issues, as I mentioned. And my job at the time where I was working at a financial institute at a bank. And I would help people with their checking accounts all the time. And I was having my own financial issues, and I would see all this money in the bank that people had. But that's not my money. It was just something that was like, if only I had that amount, I could take care of what I needed to take care of. But it wasn't meant for me to still staying at home. It was meant for me to move. So I'm saying all this to say to you, stay strong, stay focused on God and what God wants for you in the direction he has for your life. He will make sure you're taken care of. Don't try try to do things that are ungodly. Do things that are godly, and allow God to lead you in what He wants you to do. Have a wonderful and blessed day. Next topic, I am going to be talking about a little bit more detail about demonic influences and some things that I did not mention. So it's going to be something you need to be, if you're a person who's very scared to hear like things that are demonic or influence, just letting you know, just be prepared on what I'm going to be talking about, because if you're not into hearing that or listening to that, I'm just giving you a warning ahead of time. But I will be sharing some other stuff that I did not talk about before. Have a wonderful day and have a blessed day. Bye-bye.